Chapter 1 Hat. When I was 6 years old, I saw a picture in a book. It was a picture of a snake who was eating a big animal. Here is a copy of the picture. In the book it said, "Snakes eat the whole animal. Then they are not able to move. And they sleep for 6 months." I thought about the life in the jungle. Then I made my first picture. This is my picture number 1. I showed my fantastic picture to the adults. And I asked them if my picture scared them, but they answered, "How can I be scared of a hat?" My picture was not a picture of a hat. It was a picture of a big snake who ate an elephant. I then drew the inside of the big snake so that the adults could understand. They always need explanations. This is my picture number 2. The adults advised me to stop drawing snakes, from the inside or the outside. They told me that it was better to study geography, history, maths, and grammar. That's why, at the age of 6, I left a great career as a painter. I did it because my picture number 1 and picture number 2 were not successful when adults saw them. Adults never understand anything alone. And children are not happy when they have to always give them explanations. So I had to choose another profession. I learned to fly planes. I flew all over the world. And it's true that geography was very useful to me. I could see the difference between China and Arizona at first look. It is very useful if you are lost in the night. During my life, I had a lot of contact with many serious people. I lived a lot among the adults. I could see them from a close distance. This experience did not improve my opinion of them much. When I met an adult who looked a little normal, I showed him or her my picture number 1. I always had this picture with me. I wanted to know if this person really understood life. But the person always said, "It's a hat." Then I never spoke to this person about big snakes or forests or stars. I went to his or her level and we talked about bridges, golf, and politics. And the adult was happy to meet such a reasonable man. So I lived alone. I didn't know anybody who I could really talk to. But one day it all changed. I had an accident in the Sahara Desert. It was 6 years ago. Something was broken in my engine. I didn't have any mechanic or any passenger in the plane with me. To repair the plane alone was a difficult job. But I had to do it. It was a question of life or death for me. I had only enough drinking water for a week. Chapter 2 Sheep. The first night I slept on the sand 1,000 miles from any land with people. I was more isolated than a sailor on a raft in the middle of the ocean. So you can imagine my surprise when a funny little voice woke me up in the morning. It said, "Please, draw me a sheep." What? Draw me a sheep. I jumped to my feet as if I was hit by lightning. I looked around. And I saw a very unusual little man who was looking at me very seriously. This is the best picture of him, Wick. But my picture, of course, is much less fascinating than the original model. It's not my mistake. I was stopped in my career as a painter by the adults at the age of 6. And I never learnt to draw anything, except snakes from the outside and snakes from the inside. I looked at this little man with my eyes full of surprise. Don't forget that I was 1,000 miles from any land with people. It was interesting to see that this little man didn't look tired, hungry, thirsty, or scared. He didn't look like a child who was lost in the middle of the desert, 1,000 miles from any land with people. When I finally managed to speak, I said to him, "What are you doing here?" He repeated, very slowly and very seriously, "Please draw me a sheep." He said, "It doesn't matter. Draw me a sheep." But I never drew a sheep. So I drew him one of only 2 pictures which I was able to draw. It was a big snake from the outside. And I was shocked to hear the little man say, "No, no, no. I don't want an elephant inside a big snake. A big snake is a very dangerous animal, and an elephant takes a lot of space. Where I live, everything is very small. I need a sheep. Draw me a sheep." So then I made a picture. He looked at it carefully, then he said, "No. This sheep is already very ill. Make me another." So I made another picture. My friend smiled gently at me. "You have to see it too. This is not a sheep. It's a ram. It has horns." So then I made another picture. But it wasn't good either. This sheep is too old. I want a sheep which will live a long time. At that moment, my patience was gone. Because I was in a hurry to start repairing my engine, I quickly drew this picture, and I said, "That's a box. The sheep which you want is inside." I was very surprised when I saw the light in the face of the young man. This is exactly how I wanted it. Do you think that the sheep will need a lot of grass? Why? Because where I live, everything is very small. I believe that there will be enough grass for it. I gave you a very small sheep. He looked closely at the picture. It is not very small. Look. It is sleeping now. And this is how I met the little prince. Chapter 3: A Planet. It took me a long time to understand where he came from. The little prince asked me many questions. I also asked him questions, but he usually didn't answer them. But from his speaking, I slowly started to understand many things. For example, when he first saw my plane, he asked, "What is this thing?" I will not draw my plane here. It is too complicated for me, I answered. This isn't a thing. It flies. It's a plane. It's my plane. And I was proud when I told him that I could fly. Then he said, "What? You fell from the sky?" "Yes," I said. "Oh. It's funny." And the little prince started to laugh very loudly. I was angry. My situation was serious. How could somebody think that it was funny? Then he added, "So you also fell from the sky like me. What planet are you from?" At that moment, I started to understand more about him. And I asked him quickly, "Do you come from another planet?" But he didn't answer me. He only moved his head gently. He was still looking at my plane, of course. On that thing you couldn't come from very far. And he started to think deeply. He was thinking for a long time. Then he took his sheep out of his pocket. And he started to look at the sheep carefully. You can imagine that I wanted to know more when the little prince spoke about falling from the sky. I asked him, "Where do you come from? Where is your home? Where do you want to take your sheep?" He was quiet for a long time. Then he answered, "The good thing about the box is that at night I can use it as a house for the sheep." "Of course. And if you are good, I'll also give you a rope. Then you can tie the sheep during the day." But the little prince was shocked by this offer, tie the sheep. It is a funny idea. But if you don't tie the sheep, it will run away. It will be lost. My friend started to laugh loudly again. But where do you think the sheep can go? Anywhere. Straight, left, right. Then the little prince said seriously, "The sheep can go away. It is okay. Where I live, everything is so small." He was a little sad. Then he added, "Where I live, nobody can go very far." So, this way, I learned a second very important thing. The planet of the little prince was very small. It was only a little bigger than a house. But it's true that it wasn't a big surprise. I knew very well that we don't only have planets like Earth, Jupiter, Mars, and Venus, which have names. There are also hundreds of other planets, which are sometimes so small that it's difficult to see them through the telescope. When an astronomer discovers one of them, he doesn't give the planet a name, but only a number. He calls it, for example, asteroid 3251.